Hello everybody, welcome back to week 16 of my check-ins. I am very excited about this week. I've had some really good progress in the mirror. The weight on the scale is always a little bit frustrating, but we'll get into those details as we go through all of my data. I'll walk you through day by day, how I've been able to adhere to my very poverty-stricken macro targets. At this point in the contest prep, and any challenges that I might have overcome. I'll talk a little bit about my training, and then of course, as always, at the very end, I'll go through and answer the questions that you guys have submitted on YouTube. So again, thank you so much for everybody that takes the time to ask questions. They're always very, very great questions, things that I know a lot of people are really interested in, and then of course all of the free resources and downloads that you can access from my website that can help you guys with your own journeys if you are somebody that's looking to either do a muscle building phase or you're trying to optimize and improve your body composition with fat loss. So I guess I'll just dive right in. So let's go over and have a look at my weigh-in data for this week. So again, I really want to point out the importance of understanding all of the variables that go into the body weight on the scale, because it is not as clear cut as I guess you might think. I've got lots of videos on YouTube that talk about this. In fact, last week I did one that covers that exact subject, though I missed out, a couple of things like supplements. They were kind of not relevant necessarily to the subjects that I wanted to touch on. But here, let's have a look at my weight. So at the beginning of the week, you can see here, I weighed in at 136.7, which is actually very terrifying at this point in the prep. So 16 weeks in, that's basically a few pounds down from where I started. So again, I've got to look at the variables that were influencing that number. And you can see over here in this column where I mark whether or not I had my cycle. Well, I got it and I still had it as I moved into this new week. So I didn't weigh the previous Saturday and the Sunday because I knew my weight was going to be artificially skewed. And you can see here in this particular day, I came in at 136.7. So I was also having a little bit of a mild anxiety attack. However, thankfully, knowledge trumps that emotional, reactive decision. I didn't go and do anything crazy. I knew that my weight would be influenced because of my menstrual cycle. So we tend to hold on to a lot more water. We also tend to have a slow down effect on our gastrointestinal transit time. And that is because of the elevations we see in our progesterone around the time of our cycle. And that has an influence on the smooth muscle that I guess helps with those peristalsis contractions that allows kind of food to move through our GI. So I was weighing in really heavy on that particular day. And I also know after last week where I really ramped up my cardio. So I did last week 5 HIIT rides because I went over my calories. If you followed last week's video, I just went way over because I was so hungry. And then I did a little bit of extra movement to kind of compensate for that. So as a result, I know I was also holding on to a lot of water because of that acute inflammatory response to that new training stimulus, that extra intensity, all that work. My muscles were very sore. So multiple things or influences kind of impacting that particular scale weight. Now, as we come down to Wednesday this past week, I was still at 135.2. And again, I'm still nervous at this point going, okay, all right, take a deep breath. You're doing everything right with your nutrition. It shall pass. And of course, by Sunday, I'm back down in the 132s, which is right where I know I am. And again, I can see in the mirror, like the leanness is really starting to kind of show through. It was really nice to see how I actually look in my bikinis because they arrived today or this week. So that was really exciting. So one thing that I'm actually going to do here, and I want us to look at my weekly average for one moment, and then what I'm going to do to determine what my more true weight was. So if I take these two weights out, so I'm just going to backspace, delete those. Actually, hang on, I want to show you what it was before we do that. So if I kept those numbers in, my weight average for this past 7 days would have been 134.3. Last week was 133.3. So it would look like I have gone up a full pound. You can see here in this weight change from previous week column, I've gone up a whole pound. But we know that those numbers are not accurate. So I need to get rid of those because they are skewing my average like crazy. And I want to know how I'm really doing right now. So if I take those out, I actually lost 0.65 of a pound. So I'm much happy with these numbers. And when I look in the mirror visually, I can see that change. So that's kind of all I need to know, I guess, about the last week in terms of my weight on the scale. I'll put those back just because I want to keep the real data in there, but just to point out and show you guys. So coming over to have a look at my nutrition for this week, you can see here that my average weekly calorie intake came in at 1249. So I actually nailed my targets this week, which is, I guess, going to make me very happy. It was so difficult, really, really challenging. There was so much thought that went into basically every single meal occasion, thinking about the next meal occasion, thinking about what I want to eat so that I can stay compliant to my targets. It's an obsessive amount of time that goes into thinking every single meal through with such little caloric flexibility. And I know that any of you guys that have been on the 1200 numbers, you know that just doesn't happen overnight. And when you're that lean as well, all you do is think about food. So again, this is one of the things that I've said many times. I love competing. I love the challenge. I love just the whole process. But if there's one thing that I will take away when I'm not competing, it's that I know how much this component sacrifices my quality of life. So there's a point during the competition where it's sustainable. And when I get down to like maybe 12% body fat from me, like I'm still okay. Like I'm not really super food focused. I'm not overly hungry. I can deal with that. It doesn't mean that it's not providing any, sacrifice in my life at all. It does. I don't have the flexibility, even at that point in a prep to just enjoy my life freely. But it's these last kind of 5 or 6 weeks of the prep that are much more uncomfortable than I think the average person should ever endure. It is a stage competition physique, and I really want to make that known to people because so many folks will come up to me in the gym or, they'll make comments on social media and they're like, oh, I wish I could look like that. I'm working so hard. I'd love to look like you. And I'm like, well, it's great to love the idea of looking like this, but here's the reality. It's not something that I think the average person should be striving for. Like it's a stage physique. So if you want to do competitions, absolutely, yeah, shoot for that. That's going to be the physique that's going to help you place. But it's not really a place that I would want to be just walking around at. Like the amount of restriction and the negative influences that it can have on your life in other areas is definitely not worth it. So I would be doing this if I wasn't also a competitor. So started the week off pretty strong. I came in at 1272 on Monday, 1379 on Tuesday. I went a little bit over on this particular day. I'm thinking about some of the foods that I might have had on Tuesday, and I have a feeling it was one of the protein bars that I had left over. Didn't buy any more, but it is a brand called Nix. I really like the flavor considering the macronutrient profile, but they do have about 10 grams of 10 grams of dietary fat, up to 13 in some of the products, depending on which nut is featured in that bar. But with that, combined with a couple of the dressings and some of the egg that I had in one of my meals, like it just took my fats way up that particular day. So, and I think I also went over my targets by about 100. So I was just really hungry on that day and had a hard time sticking to macros. So I had to really reel it back in on some other days here. Wednesday, I did a really good job, went much, much higher in my protein. Obviously, I was very, concerned about going over on this day with fat. So I was much more focused and attentive to my macros on that day. So I was really kind of heavily weighing on protein because I was just like, carbs and fats, just nope, you can go over here. I'm going to focus on the protein containing foods. So I think I had on that day, some Greek yogurt with just protein type mix-ins. I also made myself some protein ice cream, which you can see here on the screen. I've had 2 versions of that this week. The first version that you can see is one with the Nix protein bar. And then on the other day, I had one with Oreo cookie just for decoration, and it was a chocolate-based product. And the macros for those are fantastic. I'm pretty sure the the protein ice cream came in at about maybe like 300 calories or something like that. It wasn't super dense, but it was an entire punnet of chocolate ice cream with an Oreo cookie on top. So those are really delicious. And I also was favoring or leaning towards like a protein shake, which I never do. But I also wanted to make sure that I had some extra calories saved up because, again, I like to go out and have something to eat on the weekend. That's really important. I love that. It's so relaxing for me after a huge week of work and lots of training. So I opted for a blueberry protein shake this week, which you can see there. I've put up on the screen. Wasn't super palatable, wasn't like my favorite thing, but that actually afforded me the capacity to then go out on Friday evening and enjoy a couple of glasses of wine at that brand new rooftop bar. I think I might have talked a little bit about that last week. So that was so much fun, and it was definitely worth a little bit of sacrifice throughout earlier days in the week. So you can see here on Wednesday and Thursday, I kind of pulled my carbohydrates back a little bit. And that was really what gave me the flexibility to have some more carbs on Friday and Saturday. So as we move through the week, I want to come down to Friday. So this was the day where we went to Nube, which is the new rooftop bar here in Fort Lauderdale, and it's at the top of the Hilton Hotel. So I had 2 glasses of wine, we got a beautiful sunset, and then we Ubered over to another place that we like to go to, which is called YOLO. Great for people watching. They have a really great DJ who does like all the throwback mixes of music that I love. So it's probably from, I don't know, like the early, 2013 era, like when I was in college. And even music before that, but they'll do like those throwbacks, but then they'll play it with like a house remix. So it's like the best of both worlds. You've got like this house vibe, but then stuff that I'm like, oh, I want to dance with somebody. So they're playing really cool music. So that was really fun. We ordered some calamari and some tuna. So I only had about 50 grams of the calamari. You can see here on the screen, it is fried. It was delicious. But I also made sure that I had something earlier before we went out so that I wasn't super hungry. And then I also ordered their tuna dish, and that has about 2 ounces of ahi tuna and a very light dressing. And then I kind of just did away with all of those prawn crackers you can see on the plate and just enjoyed the tuna. So that was my Friday evening. I actually did a really good job at hitting my calorie goals there on Friday. And then on Saturday, what did we do on Saturday? I feel like the days just all roll in together. But either way, let's have a look at my nutrition. I had 1222 calories here, 99, a little bit low on the protein, but 130 carb and 34 fats. Very low fiber. So again, these 2 days, I was definitely focused more about just hitting my total calorie goal, getting as close to my protein as I could, but still enjoying some foods kind of eaten outside of the home. And then on Sunday, I came in at 1246. So this is actually a really fun day. In the morning, we kind of got up, had some coffee, went for a big walk with the dog, and then did a training session. And then we came home and had these giant egg white omelets. So again, I'll put some of these pictures up on the screen for you. That was extremely low carb. You can see there that I don't have any breads or any burritos or anything like that. No English muffins, no croissants, none of the fruits, all the things that I love. But instead I had these crispy corn cakes. Now the picture doesn't look overly appealing, but they have been so tasty with cream cheese. So you can see me holding up like, I guess this corn tortilla. They're like kind of like a rice cake, but I have done rice cakes so much. I'm so over them. And these actually have less carbohydrates. So there's only 4 grams of carbs in each of these corn cakes. So they've been really good with just a fat-free light Laughing Cow cheese wedge or some of the spreads that I make. So if you've been using my document that's got all of my recipes that are being featured throughout the prep, my cookies and cream spread, I've been using that. Excuse me. As well as the homemade peanut butter that I've made as well. So that was kind of what I had for my breakfast, relatively low calorie. And then after that, we actually decided to ride to, I guess, a local brewery that we really enjoy going to. It's called Funky Buddha. They have multiple like different beers on tap. In fact, when we got there, we rode our bikes over again just to get some extra movement in. You can see here I did a pretty hefty ride on Sunday. I think in total it was about 60 minutes, maybe a little bit more. The calories only came in at 300, which is similar to what I would do if I'm normally doing a HIIT ride, but I wanted to just enjoy the ride. I didn't want to have to do intentional HIIT afterwards. So I was like, okay, how can I still enjoy my Sunday, but also get some movement in? So we rode over to the brewery and they still had their 420 menu going. So Sam ordered the 420 flight of brews, and then I also ordered a cocktail, which is like a PB&J Manhattan. So it's like a bourbon base with like a blueberry and blackberry muddled I don't know, flavor or syrup, which I just sipped all these things. I didn't actually have a full drink. It would just be too many calories. I didn't want to waste them on that. But it was just fun to get out of the house and try some of those. So if you can see there, we've got the 4 different beers. They were like lots of different flavors. I think they were like tangerine, blueberry. There was another one. I can't remember what it was exactly. But either way, it was cool to try. And then we also ordered this pretzel bread. So I did have some of that and I tracked it. I put down about 30 grams, which is like your average slice of bread. So I tracked some pretzel bread, and then they had these fun like toppings. So there was like a beer cheese, and then I guess a melting pot cheese. And then they also had a honey butter, which was so delicious. So I had a little bit of that. And that was basically like what carbs I could have had at breakfast. I chose to have the pretzel bread instead when we went out. So that was really, really good. And then that evening, we also came home and I ended up making a ricotta cheese lasagna, which is like a fat-free, it uses fat-free ricotta cheese. And instead of using lasagna sheets, which is obviously very carb-centric, I replaced the layers of the lasagna with 0 carb mini tortillas. So I use those for like my tacos and for enchiladas. And pretty much everything, but they actually make that middle layer. So instead of having really carb heavy lasagna, it's basically all fiber, which is excellent. So all of the recipes that I am describing to you right now are all going to be featured in the document that you can download from the description here right in YouTube's, if you're interested, of course. So that's available to everybody. So that's kind of like how I got through the weekend. I did really great. My fiber was a little bit lower because of those 2 days where we ate out. But overall, I'm so happy with how everything kind of panned out. If we come over and have a look at my total sleep, my sleep hours are going down by the minute, not because I'm trying to go to bed later or anything like that. But my sleep is just getting worse and worse. Like I am basically just laying there, like trying to go to sleep. I eventually do, but I just feel like it's really light sleep. I'm really uncomfortable. I think all of the muscle soreness is kind of catching up with me a little bit as well, which is about standard for this point in the prep. So that total number is down a little bit. And again, there's really very little I can do unless I wanted to supplement with like a melatonin or something like that, maybe 3 or 5 milligrams. But I'm trying to kind of avoid that until I absolutely have to, and it's like necessary. And maybe I will this week. I'm not too sure. We'll see. But my muscle soreness is probably similar. I did notice that earlier in the week, a couple of the scores were a little bit higher. And that was because I replaced some of the exercises in my new program. So the Miss Bikini Olympia Part 3, if anybody is following along on the app or they're doing the challenge, you guys will have access to that. And again, just to get my energy expenditure back up a little bit because I could see it kind of dwindling down, I did do some more compound movements in lieu of some of the single unilateral exercises that I had programmed. But just bringing back Smith machine squats again and another compound exercise, I can't remember what it was, but I know I did that. I was so sore. My adductors were like, "Oh, Holly." So a little bit sore this week on a couple of days, but you get used to it. Hunger and fullness, or I guess my hunger was very, very high this week, so that's got a really low score. Of course, food focus equally high throughout the week. It's just constant now. I found that, I almost have to question every single meal that I have. It's like, what do I really want? What is going to satisfy my need right now the most? And kind of craft my recipe or my meal to what I feel like right now. If I was following a meal plan, oh my God, I would do my head in, because, when you've got something that's set in stone and there's no flexibility, I just personally find that my compliance would be so low, because I might not feel like what's on my, meal plan. I might want something else. And when there's a million ways to, organize your food and still come out with the same macros and similar fiber, like, to me, it's so much worth the investment in, good recipe preparation. So food focus definitely very high. And of course, my energy levels, they have been crap. I guess in terms of like all of the subjective symptoms that people don't talk about, libido, definitely down the tank this week and last week. It's really, really frustrating, actually. I don't think anyone really talks about that, but it's the reality of being, I guess, a natural competitor. And then, my sleep, we've talked about that. Energy, muscle soreness, food focus, all of the things. Irritability. I have been so cranky and short this week. I think there are some things like within the business that are like making me a little bit more frustrated than I would normally be, and it's tested my patience so much. But I've definitely like found myself saying, I'm so sorry for being so just like short and or boring. Like, I have nothing to say. It's like where I might normally be really conversational and we're doing something, like nothing comes out. I'm just like, my brain's just going to take a little bit of a siesta right now. Like 110% effort goes into my work, and then it's basically like I'm checked out for the rest of the time. So again, thinking about like the people that are in your environment when you're competing, it really wears on them as well, because, if you're normally really bubbly and motivated and happy and, all of the different things that you might typically, be known for, when you diet, you kind of lose a little bit of that, because you just, retreat. You are a lot more quiet. At least that's how I feel with, I guess, what's going on up here. And then just less interested in anything else as well. It's like I don't have the brain capacity to be interested in this drama. I'm just like, I'm not a drama person on a good day. But, anything else that's kind of going on, I'm like, oh my God, this is the last thing that I just don't want to think about that. Like essential things only, thank you. Like important and urgent. So, that's one of the realities of getting to the point of stage leanness. But let's look at my overall week. Now, I wanted to point something out that's kind of crazy. I don't have the total listed here, but I wrote it down. So between my resistance training, my HIIT cardio this week, and my low intensity steady state walks or rides, my total number of minutes exercising tallied to 930 minutes. That is 15 hours of intentional movement at the moment, compared to when I first started. So if we go back to the very beginning, I was only at 10 hours of intentional movement between my lifting and then, various points of cardio. So a lot of time spent exercising. So that is because I need to get to, the low body fat percentage that's necessary for competition. So this is much more than I would say is realistic for the average person. So keep that in mind as well when it comes to, dieting and being stage lean. Or unless you've given yourself like a year to prep, then that might look a little bit different. So again, it depends on what your weekly obligations are, how much you're trying to lose, and you have to create a certain deficit to accomplish that. So I did meet my targets this week. Very happy. I came in at 5,800 calories of estimated energy expenditure. So again, I just want to point out the calories that I'm tracking on my watch, the absolute number that it tells me after every session that I do. It's very unlikely that it is actually correct. But what I am looking at here are the relative changes from one week to next. So I came in at 5,800, and my goal, if we go to my adjustments for this past week, was 5,400. Oh, we've got a big lightning storm out here. Crazy. Hopefully the power stays on. So I exceeded that by about 400 in total, which I'm really happy. I was a little bit nervous about, but I was so focused and so committed this week. And then if we go back to my steps, I came in just around 13,458 for my average. You can see there were some days where I had 18,000. This is when we walked to dinner and then walked back. So that was like a 90-minute walk, which was very helpful. So instead of Ubering, we walked around, which is good because there's so many places that are close. So I got 18,000 steps on that day. And then my lowest day was my busy day, one of my busy days at work at 11,000. Okay, guys, slight intermission there. So when I said jokingly, I hope the power doesn't go off, no matter, seconds later, and my power goes off, and then it was out for 25 minutes. So by the time it finally came back on, I had other meetings, and I have since eaten dinner, had someone come to my house and pick up equipment that I was selling because I don't use it anymore. And I guess we'll try and finish the video. So, all right, I know I was just talking about what am I going to do for my nutrition for the next coming few days. So, like I was saying, I don't think that I need to make any adjustments to my macro targets. I've lost 0.6 of a pound this week if we take out those two outliers, which were being influenced by my menstrual cycle and some really heavy training days with all of that extra cardio. So these numbers are definitely moving me in the right direction. I can see it in the mirror. I'm really happy with these targets. Keeping the same for my cardio, for the same for my resistance training, the same for my steps, and my weekly goal of 5,400 calories as estimated based on my Apple Watch. So that's basically what I am in store for this week. So yay, I will really enjoy all of those calories and such an easy week of 15 hours of training. But hey, such is life. I put myself through this, so I can't really complain, can I? All right, so I want to pop over to YouTube because I know that there have been some really great questions coming through. And then, of course, at the end, I want to show you where you can access all of our free resources, downloads, and I guess products and services that are going to help you guys in your own endeavors for your health and fitness goals. So let's pop over to YouTube. So these are the questions that came through for week 15. So lots of positive feedback just generally about the series. I know I've also had other people ask, am I going to do a follow-up video series on a building phase or at least when I take a break between shows, if there are any? Absolutely, yes. I want you to see kind of what I do, what my approach is, how to best navigate that, as there are many ways that you can do it and some are very wrong. So I'll definitely continue to do a series outside of the competitions. So a couple of people have said posing looks really good. I've had quite a bit of a slip up as well. Fatigue caught up and kind of looks like I had peaked a little bit too early. I also put some extra training and cardio in. We've got this. So yeah, a couple of people joining in on the, I guess this whole prep series because they've got shows around the similar time. So yeah, like come to this page. Let's keep chatting. I know that it's nice to feel supported and have a community of people around you that are kind of going through the same kinds of struggles. So I'm glad that you're tuning into the video series and it's proving to be helpful. So yes, good luck, Connie. Okay, so one of the questions here is, I love watching your videos. How often would you incorporate deloads and would you eat at maintenance during this time? So I think I've talked about training deloads in previous videos, but let's do it again. I think it really depends on an individual's recovery. And part of that also comes down to, how intently are you training? What's your training frequency? What types of exercises are you doing? What's the ratio of compound isolation movements? There are so many variables that really will govern whether or not somebody needs to take a recovery week and pull their training volumes back down to about half just to allow for, improved recovery. And again, I've said before, the downside of training through an under recovered state is that you're not going to get the same, signaling to your muscle to grow. You might be able to get through the session, but it doesn't mean that you're getting the best outcome for the work and the time that you are investing. So I hope that that's really clear. So I guess some things to look out for in terms of when to take a training deload. I would definitely say your just general fatigue. So, when you're getting out of the bed in the morning, when you're going to go to the gym, how are you feeling? That's why I do that subjective score analysis on myself. There are also some great tools and apps that you can use to kind of monitor that as well. Heart rate variability is another one that a lot of my clients like to use. So how's your fatigue on a scale of 1 to 10? Where are you at? Because you've been consistently sitting at an 8 or a 9 out of 10 for many weeks, that might be a bit of an indicator that it's time to take a deload. And again, you can do that in multiple ways. You can reduce your training volume by half is usually a good, metric or a percentage reduction. And you can do that by reducing the training frequency. You can reduce your set number. You can reduce the load. You can also reduce the training intensity. Obviously, those two things work hand in hand. Or you can increase your recovery time without making any adjustments to the training load. So lots of ways that you can kind of like practically execute a deload, but I would also be looking at things like your motivation, like how are you feeling about your training at the moment? I think when you're in a diet phase, I think you've got to be a little bit more objective if you can, because how you feel about your training when you're dieting and calorically restricted is probably going to be really different in comparison to when you, the same person, are doing the same program but in a calorie surplus and you've got plenty of energy availability, you're getting recovery and you're feeling good. So motivation definitely can play into whether or not it's time to take a deload. What else? External stresses. So what have you got going on in, your lifestyle outside of just you in the gym? Have you got any career stress, personal relationships, financial stress? Like what's going on in your life that might contribute to the need for a deload? Like you can be really intentional and smart about the training that you're doing if you know that you've got an extremely stressful, busy couple of weeks coming up at work, for instance. I know that that's a similar conversation I have with some busy mums. It might not be that their personal schedule or anything that they are doing, directly, is causing them a whole lot of stress, but maybe their kids have got like several excursions and they've got to go and do parent interview help over here. They've got to go and do this thing. They've got extra, Stedfords for their, daughter's dance recitals. It's just go, 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 go. And they're in the middle of a fat loss phase. So under certain situations, you've got to take into consideration the external stresses because that's going to make a big difference about how manageable your training is and also, the likeliness of an injury. Performance is another one. So how are you actually performing in the gym? So are you able to maintain your current training loads? Are you lifting at the same weight? Have you been able to make progressions? Or are you starting to see a decline? Are you starting to regress in certain exercises? Because that could also be a bit of an indicator that you are pushing a little bit too hard and that your body needs some time to rest. And then last but not least, I would say muscle soreness. So if soreness is showing up for you every single day, you are chronically in pain, that would also be another indicator to take a deload. So usually 4 to 8 weeks is kind of the timeframes that I would expect for somebody to need a deload if they are training, through all of the principles of hypertrophy. They've got some progressive overload built into the program. The intensity is increasing. It's getting more and more difficult towards the end of a mesocycle. So 4 to 8 weeks is usually when I will be intentional about programming a deload, especially in our app, because I don't want to risk people getting injured if they truly are pushing to the RPEs that I am prescribing. So thank you so much for that question. A couple of people just saying thank you so much for all the expertise. What else have we got? Okay. Hi, Holly. Just curious about your strategy. Will you be able to apply feedback the judges give you after your first show? Of course, it'll depend what that feedback is, but would you consider hiring a coach who coaches other IFBB pros? Obviously, you know a lot about fat loss and muscle gain, but even Jennifer Dory, the current Miss Bikini Olympia, has a coach. From what I can see, most of the other pros have a coach just for that objective eye and to help apply any feedback from the judges. The bikini category is so different than other categories in the IFBB, and there are many coaches who are super familiar with criteria and how to bring that package after the judges package that the judges are asking for. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question or the comment. So I have a posing coach. So I have somebody that is also a judge that has been helping me over the last couple of weeks. So in terms of the actual posing itself, yes, absolutely. I think that would be completely naive of me to think that I can go in and know exactly what I should look like when, this is a new for me category and federation. So yes, I think that's really important. As far as getting feedback after the shows, I think I will obviously, be pretty forthcoming in requesting that information, and then I'll pass that across to my posing coach. And thankfully, I have a lot of people that I know that are competitors or that are in the industry that have and will be very forthcoming, I think, in helping me with that. So, yeah, I think I have a good amount of supports. But I guess we'll see if I continue to show up and I'm not making any adjustments or the feedback isn't changing. Then I might go and get a second opinion. But I think right now I feel really good with who I am working with. Okay, so what have we got down here? Do you think that it's possible for... Hang on, let me start that again. Hi, Holly. Do you think it's possible to do a contest prep for the first time and not have a post-show rebound? I want to compete in the fall, but I'm nervous about the potential rebound that could happen due to such caloric restriction. Do you think it's possible with the right coach and the mindset to reverse out of the diet for the first contest prep? Thank you so much, and I look forward to your videos. So I do think that it's possible, absolutely. But I will say, I think a lot of people misunderstand or maybe misjudge the amount of discipline that is still required after the fat loss phase is over. And this is not just for, somebody like myself or a competitor. It is for any client that undertakes a fat loss phase. Whether they are, striving for 15% body fat, 20% body fat, or down to the sub 10s like an actual athlete that's competing in a physique competition. So I guess the degree of the restriction and the degree of leanness is usually a reflection of the challenges that might arise after the competition, which is why I think dieting for a bodybuilding competition, physique sport, is inherently higher risk for, I guess, these kind of refeeding or rebound, I guess you referred to it as. Compared to somebody that's not getting stage lean. The symptoms that you were experiencing subjectively are significantly less aggressive. They are less extreme, when you're not dieting to that really lean, low body fat percentage. So I think one thing to consider is obviously as we go through a fat loss phase, your body fat is coming down, and one of the main, drivers of that, desire to eat calories, to eat more food is leptin. Obviously that is closely tied to your body fat because leptin is secreted in the adipose tissue. So I think one thing that I would say is be ready for the following 6 to 10 weeks, even after a fat loss phase, to still feel pretty uncomfortable, particularly if your goal is to maintain some of the body fat loss that you have accomplished during that fat loss phase. It is possible to create what I would consider a new body fat set point. So if you're able to maintain a lower body fat percentage for a really long time, probably more than 6 months, there would be some positive adaptations in that you would start to feel subjectively a little bit better as some of those hormone levels try to adapt back towards a more normal level for you. And the, inherent difficulties start to subside. So keep that in mind. I guess any fat loss phase is going to contribute to some of those symptoms, but the degree to which you diet will be a direct reflection of how difficult that post-diet phase is. But I think if you go in with that understanding and that you are flexible, you can't expect to finish a fat loss phase and go, oh, I just got down to 12% body fat and I think I'm just going to stay here right now on these low calories. I'll be fine. I would say, no, you're delusional. Absolutely not. We need to give you some flexibility to allow for some positive adaptation and for some body fat regain. But we want to pick a number that feels really realistic for you. So usually after competition, even for myself, I will be looking at where I'm at and I'm going to go, okay, well, what can I reasonably hit and show up and do it without feeling like, the world is crashing down, or at least how I've been feeling while I'm dieting for a competition. So we pick a number that feels sustainable or realistic. And, we have to continue to practice all of the behaviors that allowed us to get to that level of leanness in the first place. If you expect to just, stop all of the training all of a sudden and then go back to eating exactly how you were, your body fat levels are going to return really quickly. And, instead of, I guess, maintaining or hanging on to some of that leanness, if that was your desired goal, there might be an unnecessary amount of body fat regain. So we have to slowly taper off the exercise. We have to slowly increase calories and continue to be really mindful and continue to apply that cognitive restraint and some of the sacrifices for a number of weeks after the fat loss phase. But I've had plenty of clients who've been able to do a really successful building phase afterwards. There's a certain amount of adaptation which can be achieved. And that's, I guess, where this concept of reverse dieting comes in. It's basically allowing for caloric increase without a whole lot of body fat regain. But there is definitely a ceiling to that. It does not just keep going, incrementally in a linear direction without some other variables that are perhaps changing in the background that are driving the metabolism to increase or to improve, and that is lean tissue. So usually, if somebody finishes a diet and they're able to get their calories back up to, 50% more than what they were on, then what I would expect is that a small percentage of that increase has come from adaptation, like true positive adaptation. And the rest is actually because you've just done the work, you've got back to lifting, you're lifting consistently still, you're showing up, you're performing well, and you've actually gained some muscle mass. So I hope that helps answer that question. You can definitely come out of a show without rebounding, but it doesn't mean that it's not just as challenging as probably the last couple of weeks, going into the competition. Maybe a little bit more a psychological challenge, just in that, the show often keeps you motivated to stay on task. Whereas once that pressure has been lifted, just kind of voluntarily, continuing those behaviors for a lot of people is really hard. I think that's probably the one thing that can help keep you on track for that post-diet phase. Okay, let's go over here. I may cop some critics for this post, and that's okay because it's healthy to have different perspectives. I just struggle with this content. Holly provides some really realistic content and her journey in the fitness industry, which at this time is so helpful and comforting and all about the unrealistic perfectionism. Yet all the images and the content of Holly are in peak condition. I would push back on that. I don't know that the pictures that you see of me are in peak condition. At least if you go to my Instagram page, I'm just posting either food stuff, I'm putting up random videos of my training, and it's just like the reality of what I do. If you look back for the last 12 months even, you would probably just see the Holly that's been for the last 12 months. And arguably, I have maintained a much leaner physique this last 12 months. And that's probably because I let go of, rigid tracking. I developed a really good, healthy relationship with food. And I wasn't having these kind of big binge restrict cycles anymore. It was a lot more consistent. And it's the leanest that I've ever been able to maintain. And I also think just being in a healthy, happy, environment, in a good relationship, letting go of a lot of unhealthy, toxic minds, has really allowed me to kind of step into a healthier place. It's allowed me to grow and develop. And I think I'm just a happier human all around. And that really shows, I think, in my capacity to show up in my life and make good decisions for me and my health. So I think you might think that the images are all kind of in peak condition. I would argue that's probably not the case, except for the last 12 weeks or 15 weeks of my prep. Yeah, of course, I'm dieting for a show. But if you look back for the last 12 months, everything is just me sitting on my couch here doing educational videos, just turning up like how I look most days. So I wouldn't say that I've been in peak condition at all. Probably sitting at 15 to 17% body fat at times during the last year. So yeah, I want to keep reading the comments though, or the question or the comment, I think it is. But probably to most unobtainable leanness, not saying the images aren't gorgeous, but I just find it a bit contradictory. Self-love, body acceptance. So yeah, I think, what I would probably say here is that somebody else's interpretation of what's real and what's not or what's realistic and what's not is, that's the perspective of the individual. So, I can say very like comfortably, I have done so much work on like just being good with me, and content with who I am, and recognizing that my value is so much more than just physical appearance. In fact, I pride myself the most on like intelligence and intellect and education and being caring and kind and honest. So, I think this is probably more a reflection perhaps of how you're feeling. And that's not a bad thing. We all have our own interpretations, but I think I am just being me. Like there's no other way that I could show up for you. If I was to do like video content differently, I mean, I could just slap, some random stuff together on my iPhone, but I want to deliver a really professional image. I want to make sure that it's good quality, that the audio sounds good, that you can see me clearly, especially some of the video that I put in the background. Like I want to make sure that what's being shown relates to what I'm talking about. So I think in terms of the content, I'm trying to make sure that I deliver something that is really good quality so that it can be conveyed to the best of my ability. Like I'm always somebody that's going to show up and try to deliver 110%, rather than just, haphazard, throw something together, like fly by the seat of my pants, or not convey something to the best of my skill set. So yeah, I appreciate your comment. I just want to keep reading here though. It says, maybe I'm not the right consumer for the content. I'm not really sure why deprivation with the impact on mental health is classed as a sport. I've always seen a sport as building you up to a peak, where this sport is, let me go down, often shrinking yourself to be subjectively judged by your body in that moment. Yeah, so again, I think I want to talk to that because I've struggled, or at least thought about the concept of bodybuilding versus my self-image. And I have kind of completely detached the two things. So when I first started, the reason I got into bodybuilding in the first place was because I was so insecure. I needed validation. I felt like that, the only thing that I had to offer was my appearance. And, that's why I would do these things. But with a lot of work and recognition of all of the other qualities that I think that I possess, I can say this is part of me. I think that I inherently have the genetics for this sport. I don't necessarily agree that, manipulating your body composition is something that you should do, but it's a sport that I think I can do really well. So, if I'm going to do something to the best of my ability, why wouldn't I put myself in a sport that I'm really good at? It'd be like saying, okay, what about a power lifter? Someone that's got gigantic long arms. They are like built, they are anatomically put together to be a really great power lifter. They might have really short femurs and very muscular thighs. So they're going to be a great squatter, a great deadlifter. So, I would look at that the same and say, I think I am just really suited to this sport. I also don't stay in that level of leanness year round. Absolutely not. I'm so adamant about sharing to women. This is a sport of aesthetics, but it's not and should not be your identity. And I don't encourage the average person to try and get this lean. This is my sport. This is something that I choose to do. And I'm also not staying here for the whole year. I get in and I get out. I've always done like 1 or 2 shows, and then I'm back to a body fat percentage that is, somewhere probably between 15 to 20%. And it's been much higher at times every time I do a building phase. And I have documented all of that. If you go back to 2018 and 2019 and 2020, you are going to see a version of me that is like 23% body fat. And that's okay. Like I still filmed then. I still filmed all my training. I share that journey, and I'm trying to do it from a place of education. So, I don't disagree with you saying that, is it really normal to have a sport that is about deprivation? No, but there's also an opportunity with this sport to build and to grow and be strong. And I've done powerlifting competitions, in most of my off seasons up until recently, where it started to like injure my body. And if I had the time outside of my work obligations, and running businesses, I'd probably also still do a sport, a team sport. Like I grew up doing basketball, I did track athletics. I would love to do that, but I am also really time poor, or I would sing or go back to playing the piano more consistently or something like that. So I think, where it becomes problematic or dysfunctional is when it starts to have a negative impact on your life, or the life of people like in your immediate environment. So, if me doing this bodybuilding competition was having a negative impact on, every single person in my, immediate proximity of friendships, relationships, etc., then it's probably, not something that's going to be very positive for me or those people. If it was affecting my ability to do my career, it was affecting my activities of daily living. If it was having major psychological challenges to the point where I can't even get out of bed in the morning, then I would say this is not something that's healthy. But it doesn't have that effect on me. But for other individuals, again, depending on all of our circumstances, it might have those effects. Just as I would say, if somebody's struggling with a disordered eating behavior or they've got an eating disorder, I wouldn't say that bodybuilding is the sport they should be doing. Let's get you feeling good about yourself as a person, not necessarily needing a sport to have to be the motivating factor to lift and to exercise. Like, I do this because I love it. I like moving my body. I feel good when I move my body, my GI especially. And I also feel really good like up here when I can exercise and get a good sweat in, and get those positive endorphins going. So, yeah, I think I can appreciate the comment. And I know that you said this is not a criticism, it's just a series of questions that you ask yourself each week. So, yeah, I appreciate you making the comment, but I think it really comes back to, the individual and where they are at on their, healing journey. And I would say that for some people, depending on where they are in that journey of self-love, self-respect, self-kindness, how they value themselves, seeing somebody kind of transition from, being this body composition to this body composition, taken out of context, might give the message that it is it's appropriate to focus on being stage lean. But then you'd be missing all of the context that I talk about every week. And that is that this isn't something that's realistic. And if anyone that ever says to me, oh, Holly, body goals, I want to look like you, I say, please don't aspire to look like this just walking around, because it's not sustainable. It is the physique of a physique athlete, somebody that is doing this as part of their career. It's not a physique that I would encourage the average person to strive for. I put that up just days ago on my story when I had a picture of me doing pull-ups, and my back looks really lean. So, I'm allowed to be proud of that. Obviously, I do a sport where this is encouraged, but I also want to say, hey, this is not something that you should always and all the time be striving for. But what I can tell you is there's a healthy way to get here, or the healthiest way possible. And there's also a route that is really unhealthy. And we also need to consider the psychological implications that it has for an individual. So I hope that kind of provides a little bit more context. I really appreciate the comment. And maybe there'll be a back and forth with this one, and maybe some other people have some questions about that as well. So I think that was the last question for comment for this YouTube video. So I want to hop over to, I guess, all of the free resources and things that you can download if you are somebody that would like to, I guess, use the coaching sheets that I use. So if you're interested in getting a copy of the tracking sheets with the master data sheet, with all of this stuff, all you need to do is go and look in the description below. You can find, I guess, the links to access all of these documents. If you are interested in getting a copy of my book, The Complete Exercise Guide to Muscle Hypertrophy, you can go and find that on my website. Obviously, that's linked in the description below, but you can get the first 2 chapters for free if you want to read and see whether you like my writing style and obviously the things that are in it. But there are 13 chapters on, I guess, all of the different training techniques that are really important, I guess, for achieving optimal muscle growth outcomes. And there's also a great amount of information that talks a little bit about the mechanisms behind how a muscle grows and what we need to do to get the best results. We've also got access to a host of recipes. This week I'll be putting up, I guess, more of my recipes. So if you haven't downloaded the document that's got everything written in it, that too is available in the description below. So it's got the macros, the instructions, some pictures if I've actually had a chance to take a picture of those. And there's also access to my free training programs too on the website. So all of those links are in the description for this YouTube video. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop those in for next week. And I cannot wait for, I guess we're going to be, a few days out? My gosh, let's pray that my bikini gets fixed in time because it definitely needs some modifications.